Hello, everybody. Welcome to Law Unplugged. Today, we are in conversation with a very special guest. We're delightful and blessed to have Mr. Kaustubh Srivastava. Mr. Kaustubh is a third year law student at Ram Manohar Lohia National Law University. He's a multifaceted personality, an avid moocher, a phenomenal debater, loves Hindustani poetry, and does sketching. He is the winner of the latest RK Tankha International Commercial Arbitration Moot 2020. Today, he's taken out time from his extremely busy schedule to talk and interact with us on various insights of law, law schools life, opportunities available, options, and a lot of fun. If you like this episode, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And feel free to reach out to us for any feedback or suggestion. So, without any further delay, let's jump right into the discussion.
Hello, Namaste, and welcome to Law Unplugged. We have with us today Sir Kaustubh Srivastava, who has told us that we should not address him as a sir. So, Kaustubh, we'll address you as Bhai. So, Kaustubh Bhai, how are you doing today?
I'm all good, yeah. When you call me Sir Kaustubh, it almost feels like you're calling me Sir Don Batman, but it's all cool. I'm just a third year law student, guys. I study at Dr. Ram Manohar Lohia National Law University, and I also host a podcast, so I'll plug it in because I don't think I'll get an opportunity later. It's called the One Take Show. Follow, guys. But thank you so much for calling me here. Thank you so much for the invitation. I think this is a wonderful venture that you guys have started, and I wish you all the best.
Yeah, so Kaustubh, without any further ado, I guess now that people know that you have a podcast and also you have won a moot in your third year, and that too an international. So kudos for that. But let's turn the pages a little bit back and tell us, how did you enter into the field of law?
Well, Rajesh, I believe law has. I won't be as self-indulgent as to say that I've always wanted to do law. I took humanities in my class 11th. It was a very difficult decision for me because the place that I come from, I used to live in Haridwar. No school there used to have humanities. I don't think of any school that had humanities. I took humanities, and obviously, like any other humanities student, prepared for SATs. I prepared for SATs. Did not get into the scholarships that were available at that time for Johns Hopkins because I was trying to study for applied economics. But obviously, these stories do not really contribute anywhere to me preparing for law, CLAT, or any other such story. It was in class 12 when I realized, okay, probably I cannot afford SAT or studying abroad. And with humanities, you either have the option of going for pure studies of, let's say, BA or something, or you can do professional studies like CLAT or something else of economics and something. So yes, I decided to go ahead with CLAT. I started preparing in class 12. I couldn't clear CLAT in my first attempt. My rank was somewhere around 1,000. And so yeah, but I was fortunate enough to get good percentage in my 12th, so I made it to Theoretical College in Delhi University for Political Science Honours. So I was there for a year. I studied Political Science Honours, and then almost like after a year, I decided to take CLAT again. So I took CLAT again, and this time I could make it to Dr. Ram Manohar Lohia. So yeah, that was fun. Law was always a choice that should have been made because I love debating. Law, I believe, is not exactly a professional course that teaches you to become an advocate, but it gives you the necessary skill sets that you can use to become an advocate, amongst multiple other such things that you can do in the future apart from just becoming an advocate. So I think law is a journey. It's a course that gives you the kind of skill set that you need. A very kind professor of ours has once said very famously that when you're in law school, you don't learn law, you learn how to read law, and you learn how to identify law. It's only when you get into practice, when you start learning law and how to apply it in actual life. So yeah, this was the reason. And once you start studying law, you get into debating, voting, and all these activities, you start loving the process, and eventually then you decide, okay, maybe this entire process is something that would really contribute or add value to your personality and to your journey, and will take you somewhere in future. So yes, I don't know where exactly I want to go in future. I do have a couple of streams ahead of me that I have planned. There are a couple of things that I would want to try. There are a couple of things I've tried in the past, but yes, as of this moment, I am loving the process and I'm loving the grind. So that's something that I can say.
Right. That was very insightful, Kaustubh. But Kaustubh, I also have another question. Is that how should a journey in law school be? That is, should we should we enjoy it for the first 2 years and then figure out by the third year of what is to be done, or should it always be with a goal and with focus towards what you have to do after 5 years? Because a lot of students are from middle class backgrounds, so it's not very easy for all of the students to afford NLUs. And so what's your take on this? How do you want people to approach and how to develop themselves in law school?
Well, Rajas, I believe I completely understand where you're coming from. I also am from a middle class family, and being a first generation lawyer, a first generation potential lawyer, it really is very daunting to start planning your litigation ways out, get your connections here and there. And plus, when you're not in the first year law school like NLS or NHS or NALSA, it becomes quite difficult for you to really be dependent upon your law school and just be casual about your placements and everything. So I believe I am not exactly the kind of person who should say or answer this question in absolutes, as in I should not tell you that okay, this is the correct path that you should follow, because obviously paths are very individual. What I can tell you from my personal experience is that, and this is something that all my seniors have taught me, is that in first couple of years in your law school, first, second years, right, I think it is extremely important for law students to explore. For example, debates, moot court competitions, participate in any other sessions. We talk about, you have seminars, you have writing papers. Start, do not wait for anything. If you have moots, it may be international moot. Like I did my first international moot, ALSA. It's not a very big moot. It's a pretty good moot. It's ALSA Myanmar. It was in Myanmar. It's pretty decent. So I did that in my first year. A lot of my friends in NLIU, NUS and everywhere, they do their international moots like JESUP, FDI, NMD, all these things, and they're starting from the first year itself. Probably as a researcher, but they start doing it. They start engaging with it. So yes, in the first couple of years, it's extremely important that everyone explores, and not just explore. You must also expose your vulnerabilities to every possible area. Like do sports. I couldn't do sports much, but please do sports. Go have debates and try and intern at multiple places. And don't take that staple advice of interning just with an NGO in the first 2 years. Work with a lawyer, start going to the local courts and see how it works out, see what area, because the sooner you identify what area you want to work with, the better your chances will be of identifying what you want to do after you are done with law. And trust me, it's not a good feeling when you start questioning your choices once you reach 4th year, 5th year. And I can understand that because a lot of my seniors have gone through that problem. So it's better to figure that out as soon as you can. And also, please do focus on your academics. This is something that is very important. And I tell you this from a personal experience. Academics can be easily ignored when you're not studying in a college that has a tri-semester. So, for example, if you're in NLSIU Bangalore or NLIU Bhopal, which has trimesters, it's okay. You can be motivated to study all year long. But if you're in any other university, you can easily lose track and become complacent. So it's something that you should kind of focus on, studying on academics as well. But obviously, focus on all-rounded stuff.
Right. That was amazing. To hear it from someone who has a first-hand experience is great. I guess.
And also having a first-hand experience, that is.
Yeah. But you are you are the future us. So you are 2 years ahead of us. So it becomes much more valuable to hear it from someone of your age, of your stature. So yeah, I mean that was insightful, really insightful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Kaustubh, I had a question. As we all know, we are all law students, right? Belonging to NLUs. We are curious. We have curiosity of knowing are there NLUs, especially pure NLU. Tell me something about pure NLU, like your college. How do you feel the culture activities that's over there? RMLU. What do you?
It's how do I sum it up? I think you would agree, and everyone would agree that every university is a mixed blessing. I think people get their universities at some point in time in their lives, the university that they deserve and the university that is made for them, in a way the culture that is made for them. I think RML NLU is a beautiful, beautiful university. It has a mind-blowing potential. My peers are doing exceptionally well. We are growing at a very, very fast rate. Our alumni is going places. It is exploring various fields. We are also producing world-class comedians like Mr. Basti, and we are giving out. Yeah, so we are also finding niche in all the other fields, mainly judiciary, which we are really proud of for some reason. We have a lot of judiciary clearance, like people out of clear judiciary, a lot from my university. We have placements in law firms, we have litigation, that's all board litigation. So yes, like any other good NLU, it's an NLU that gives you every opportunity that you need. It has a wonderful library. That is one thing that I really love. I think this is one problem that most universities have or colleges have. Not exactly NLUs, because most NLUs have a good infrastructure. But some NLUs have a problem with library. But RML has a wonderful infrastructure. I believe one of the best infrastructures in our country. People call it a 5-year resort stay, which I completely agree with. It's a beautiful stay in RML. And our library, our facilities, everything. Are there things that can be improved? Yes, there are multiple things that can be improved. Possibly a culture shift, because we are in Uttar Pradesh. A culture of government-related jobs is something that is predominant in the mindset of people who approach or get into our law school. Corporate jobs and placements is something that is not exactly prioritized, although anyone who wants corporate placements gets corporate placement. So people work really hard and they find their place, they find PPOs, they find internships and everything. We have good guidance. Things that can be improved upon, yes, like any second year law school, our culture also can get complacent at times, because again the academic structure is not that strict and not that engaging like any other government law school in the country. So yes, maybe we should not strive to become better than other NLUs, but we should possibly learn from universities across the country or probably across the world as to how to improve the quality of education. Right? I think Jindal right now is doing very well as far as the quality of education is concerned. Their professors have classes in form of tutorials or something. I'm not really sure, but the quality of education seems nice. Or at least that's how it comes across. I think this can improve. I'm not saying our university does not have amazing professors. We have brilliant professors. We have certain professors who've been cited as authorities in cases. We have insights. We have leaders in the field, and like any other NLU does. But again, the kind of engagement needs to increase a little. But it's something that comes with time. I think eventually it will get there.
Right, so yeah. From this, I actually remember a quote that a college is not built on bricks and stones, right? So the faculty and the people who study in that college actually matter. So
I completely agree with that. Yeah. I think if you win a moot outside, for example, you certainly put RML on a map. If you win a debate, you put RML on a map. So I think it's more important that students should not stay complacent. It's your responsibility to put your university on a map.
I'm following you, sir. Okay, Kaustubh, moving to another segment of your life is, as you mentioned in in one of your answers, that in the first 2 years one should explore, and I once again congratulate you for winning R.K. Tanka International Commercial Arbitration Moot. The reason being that I also was a part of that moot. I represented my university. Yes, I did.
Nice.
We
How was your experience?
Yeah, it was good. It was fun experience. It was great learning experience, and got some compliments. Got some the judges were at times harsh too, but it was great.
So that is the important part.
Yeah.
When judges give you the feedback you need. Yeah.
So coming again, how has your mooting journey been? Like, if you could elaborate upon it, starting from Alsa, if I'm not.
Yeah. Well, I did not start with Alsa. I have done in total of I think 4 moves. Yeah, I've done 4 moves, and I have failed to even break into 3 of them. And suddenly I won the 4th one. So please do not celebrate me as the greatest mover, although I am. I think I am one of the best people. That is the kind of ego complex that every law student has. I've always been a speaker. But I've across all 4 moves that I've done, I think I've been supported by an incredible team. Most important thing, I started firstly. I did General Technology move in 2017. Then I did ALSA, Myanmar. ALSA is the Asian Law Student Association move that happens in different South Asian countries. Then we did NLE Jodhpur Antitrust. Yes, I did NLE Jodhpur Antitrust, and after that I did NLI Tanka. So yes, I believe mooting has always had a very special part in my life, because this is one thing that I've really enjoyed. I wouldn't say exactly preparing for the moot, but speaking in the oral rounds is something that I've absolutely loved. I did fairly well in my intras. I believe every university has intras for the allotment of the moot, and for the same we actually. In all the intras, I used to win or reach the finals. So I was named the GI King, the Grand Intra King. As in, I used to do good in my intras, but not necessarily do much in the national rounds of the moots, which was very fun. Listen to every time this used to happen. But Tanka fortunately enough changed that narrative, because it's important to understand that moots are extremely arbitrary in one way or the other, and as important as it is for you to be well prepared for moots, to research, to have good skills, which will take you a long way, which will possibly take you to semi-finals if you're really skilled. But after semi-finals, I think it becomes a little bit about who's your judge, what panel is it that you're facing, what side of the problem that you're facing, and what kind of preparation do you have with respect to dealing with high pressure situations or immediate changes on the floor, or whether you adapt to them or not. As speakers, this is something that I would stress as speakers. So yes, I think this interesting journey that I've had is realizing that mooting should be done for the fun of it and not for the achievement that it gets you. Because I do not think any employer will give you a job because you won Tanka. At best, what they will give you is an internship in their law firms, which will again test you not on the basis of how well did you pronounce Mr. Arbitrator while arguing the moot. So it all depends, right? So it all works out in the end. It should be done for the fun of it. If you really enjoy mooting, if you love researching for moots, which will help you learn how to research essentially. If you learn drafting, which is important for you. If you want to learn speaking, arguing, being spontaneous, being impromptu, having the skills that are needed for the courtsmanship that you require. I think these things are something that you can learn from moots. Moots are in no way close to reality at all. We all know how arbitrations work. They are not like moots. How courts work, they are not like moots. But at least you get to know how to pronounce your lordships. So yes, in a sense, it develops you as a person. It develops you. It helps you to do something that is quite very exclusive to law school. I am also part of the moot court committee in my university, so I hope no one from my committee sees this, or I will not be allowed to say these things, because we are supposed to promote mooting. So okay, let me promote mooting now. Mooting is wonderful. Mooting is great. Mooting is good for your CVs. If you do mooting, it will give you jobs. Yes. And but if you like speaking, if you like arguing, if you like working with a team, and if you like reaching somewhere, it's a good mode of engagement, and it's much better than doing nothing. And come on, law schools will give you an ample amount of opportunities to do nothing. just sit back and play PUBG. So I think this is a much better option.
So, as you have mentioned that coding isn't necessarily a way to getting a job. So, do you think it all boils down to academics ultimately? Is that what you would agree to?
No, I most certainly do not agree to the fact that academics play much of the role. I think academics will get your foot in the door. I think if most of the law firms, they look for good academics to see whether you are a consistent performer or not, or whether you are a dedicated performer or not. I don't think academics prove whether you're smart or not. Smartest people I know do not perform good in academics because academics in NLUs are very boring. As far as employability is concerned, that is something I will answer after a couple of years when I find myself employable or not. As of this moment, I think I'm very employable, but let's see how it all turns out. But yeah, so I think one of the reasons why one should strive to do most of the things whilst also trying to direct your actions in a singular direction. For example, you do moots, debates, write papers and everything, but try doing that in one sphere of law. For example, start exploring commercial law if you're interested, or humanitarian law if you're interested. And I'm talking about students who reach third year, not first and second year. First and second years should do everything, right? Go from humanitarian law to all the way to commercial laws, to constitution law, everything. But once you start doing this, you start exploring the various opportunities within that field, which will help you decide whether you want to stick with that field or not, which is very important. For example, when I was preparing for Tankha, and if you guys are interested, I can tell you how that went about. I'm not going to tell you how we prepared for Tankha because that's extremely boring, very condescending. But the idea of going about Tankha was very interesting because I had a wonderful team. I had a second year member who was a researcher, Ravi Shankar Pandey, who is a constitutional law enthusiast and wants to go ahead with UPSC.
Okay.
And all he loves to do is analytically somehow analyze all the propositions that he receives and then go through the readings and then come up with his own hypothesis, which is very interesting for us. Something that we necessarily do not do. My other researcher was obviously Devansh Rathi. Devansh is my batchmate, he's in third year, and he's brilliant with insolvency and he's brilliant with finding out cases. And I think he'll make up a perfect candidate for a law firm job because he enjoys the grind. He enjoys sitting down and working, and possibly even if he decides to go with litigation, he'll do amazingly well because the kind of insights that he has towards solving a problem is very unique, and the way he contributed to the process. And I don't think without him we could have had the kind of arguments we had for the second issue insolvency. That is, if you remember, we argued the application of
Section
insolvency
14.
on the international arbitration.
Moratorium.
Yes. Yeah. So again, so we did not argue Section 14 at all.
Okay.
We did not argue IBC at all. Yeah. So we had a very different line of argumentation just because me and Devansh were very much interested in insolvency. And we delved deep into insolvency and decided, okay, let's not discuss IBC at all. Let's just take it into international forum.
Right.
So yeah, so that was an interesting insight. My last teammate is my co-speaker Siddhant Ahuja, who also won the best speaker in the
It's
team.
amazing.
Siddhant is one of the best candidates we have, at least in my batch. I think we have others as well who are as good. But Siddhant is one of the best arbitration candidates that we have. We are also preparing for Viz, and he knows everything about commercial law. There is to know for competitive benches like moots. He has a very keen understanding when it comes to how to deal with judges. Plus he has a very good accent when it comes to speaking English. It really helps, and he has the kind of flow that you require in a speaker. He's very insightful, extremely hardworking. That kid is very, very hardworking. Like. We were done with the moot in the final rounds. He did not even wait for the commemoration, the final ceremony, validation ceremony, where we receive awards and stuff. And he left for a debate in Chandigarh, Ludhiana. Right after the final rounds, he reached there and he won that debate as well in next one day. So that's the kind of hard work and grind that Siddhant Ahuja, which is to a team. So when you have a team like this, which is trying to push you to the farthest of your limits, and even if you are a good speaker, you are spontaneous, you think you can deal with anything. You have that kind of mindset that okay, whatever gets in front of you, you will crack it somehow. I think when you have a team like this, you feel empowered. and it is extremely important to have a team that empowers you instead of bringing you down, and that helps you develop the kind of work ethic that is required. So yeah, essentially, when you have these kinds of people around you in your company, you learn about kind of things you need to become a candidate who will be necessarily employable. A candidate, the law firms or let's say seniors in litigation cannot ignore. So you need to become someone who cannot be ignored.
Right.
And once you reach that point, who cannot be ignored, you will find employment somewhere or the other. And it's not just about finding employment, it's about creating a niche. And it's about start working and becoming humble and start grinding from the very first day. I think these things contribute a lot. The kind of people you hang out with, the kind of activities that you engage into, the kind of people you talk to, and what you learn from them. It's very important.
So yeah.
I have a question which is somewhat deviating from it. Like, apart from being exceptionally good at routing, participating in other competitions, academics, and doing a lot of stuff, all the professional stuff related things. Like, apart from this, even though you have been interested in Hindustani poetry, doing stand-up comedy, and you also run a show now. So in a law school, there's a lot of work pressure going on, the academy, as I said, all the activities, along with this managing these other not even extracurricular activities, there are fun things coming in. So how do you manage this thing, like the time management part of it?
Right. So let me just clarify one thing. There are I'm not exceptional at mooting. I have won a moot, and I'm very, very sad about it because I'm a very competitive person. There are people who are doing better than me at mooting, and I still have 2 years, and I'm really sad that COVID-19 has messed this up. But I will do exceptional in mooting in the upcoming 2 years, hopefully so that we can have that conversation once again. And then next time when you say you're exceptional in mooting, I will just smile. But yes, as far as trying to work on different areas is concerned, I love to speak, as it is quite evident by now. I speak way too much, and I love to talk, especially when it comes to engaging an audience by adding value, which is extremely important to the purpose of speaking. I think that poetry, especially writing Hindustani Urdu ghazals, I'm not very fluent with Urdu though, but I like writing Hindi ghazals. I write under at Mukhtalif on Instagram. Please do follow me. But I think that's reading ghazals has possibly had one of the most profound impacts on my perspective towards the importance of a language and the way artists approach their craft. So people think that art comes from passion. I think art comes from practice and craft. It's not just a thought that automatically becomes a share that has been written by Mir Fakiri. It has to be crafted by word by word by word, again and again and again. So this has given me the principle that okay, whatever I will do will not happen spontaneously, will not happen out of a single shot of passion, but will happen over a period of time after multiple grinding efforts on my passion to perfect it to a polished point. Then if we talk about stand-up comedy or roasting, so we have events in our university. I'm really grateful for that, which have given me the opportunity to explore this area as well, and I think I do fairly well. I think the reviews are not out yet because it's not in public, but I think I do fairly well. But this area of roasting, hosting, anchoring, or comparing, or let's say stand-up comedy has given me the opportunity to be more spontaneous on stage, be comfortable with not being prepared. So being comfortable with not being prepared is very important. What people don't focus on a lot. We are taught to be prepared all the time, but you cannot be prepared all the time. So how are you comfortable with not being prepared is by preparing for such situations. So you should always have certain quips up your sleeve. You should always have certain jokes up your sleeve. You should always be reading, listening to, or be culturally relevant. You should have pop culture understanding what exactly is happening around you. This helps me to read, as simplistic as it may sound, read newspapers. Like I love reading newspapers simply because I get to know about what is happening right now. And if I want to write materials, I think newspapers are the best place to go. They give you the material right on your face, not the deadly core part, but the other part of the newspaper. So I think yes, these things help you grow. So again, all these activities add to your personality in one way or the other. When you talk about managing time, I think you learn managing time when you start doing so many things. Because once you get into the practice, I believe so, that once you get into the practice or you get into a law firm, then trying to learn how to manage time will become extremely problematic. I think it's better that we learn how to manage time before we get into the practice. And one way to do so is to engage in as many activities at a time as you can, so that, and which, by the way, do not have a potential after effects, like potential long lasting effects on your career. So when we talk about the One Take Show, the podcast, or this venture, or my stand-up comedy will not necessarily have a very long-lasting effect on my career. So I would not suggest playing around with your examinations or your moods or stuff like that. That's not something you should experiment with. But things like these can be experimented with, and will teach you how to, essentially learn the importance of managing time and becoming punctual. I am not punctual at all, and I am not very good with managing time. I am learning. And during lockdown, I think I have learned way too much how to manage my time and how to be disciplined. Living with the family does that to you.
Right.
When your mom's around, you become disciplined. That happens.
Yeah.
Very
So
rightly
it's
said.
basically you say to explore everything and always be ready for the unexpected part of it.
Yes, that's the fun part. That's the fun part. See, I think every activity brings with it the kind of the thrill that it should. Otherwise, there's no point doing it. If you know you're going to win a mood, you won't do it. And if you know you're going to lose a mood, you're not going to do it anyway. So the point is, the possibility of you losing or failing at a venture is what makes it exciting. And I'm more than willing to fail at multiple ventures that I start on. Except like I really enjoy the grind, so I don't really mind failing.
Wonderful. I mean, this has been by far the most insightful conversation I had ever had. Maybe with my seniors or anyone for that matter. No offense to my seniors, by the way, if they are watching this.
It's okay, I'm sure your seniors do not watch so many Gary Vee videos every day just to get up.
Gary Vee is another.
That's what I do. I keep talking about this, but trust me, eventually when you have more guests on this show, which I believe is a very interesting concept, I think importance of talking to people is not given due credit. When you have a lot of guests, as we have on the One Take Show, we talk to them and we realize, oh my god, okay, so there is an entire world of experience that you can learn from. And experience is something that gives you the kind of knowledge that nothing else does. You can learn about interviews on Doctopus or any other place, but obviously talking to the person, asking them the questions that you have in your mind will give you the kind of benefit that not a lot of people have. So I think this venture of yours will go a long way in that.
Also, adding to that, as you rightly mentioned, that have a lot of experienced people on the One Take Show, which is very true. If people want to know, they can follow him. It is available on Spotify as well as on YouTube. Now you have also started capturing the YouTube game.
So yes, it was after Carrie Minati episode that I decided it's time for sensible people to capture the
Oh
YouTube
God.
game. But okay, that one was still better than Kunal Kamra's effort. All I would say is that the One Take Show is available on 8 platforms in total. It is available on YouTube, it's available on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. It's also available now on Apple Podcasts, by the way, guys. Yes. And it will soon be up on JioSaavn, and it's also up on Breaker, Radiocasts, and Radio Public, and multiple other platforms that you can access. Mostly all the podcast streaming websites where you can access podcasts, you'll find the One Take Show there. So yeah, it's up there. Also on YouTube. By the way.
Yeah. Coming to the YouTube part of it. So basically, not the YouTube part of it. I mean, how has it been? Interviewing so many people of this of a great stature. I mean, you have had additional Advocate General of Karnataka High Court, if I'm not wrong, and
With this only, right?
Sir Aditya Sondhi. And apart from that, you have had this very interesting concept of IPR management, like LinkedIn management, and I'm not able to recall the name of that like area of study. So tell us how has it been so far? How has the journey been, and what all are the insights that you want the people to, which are to be left, which are between the lines, but people often ignore them. So, would your take on that?
Right. Okay. So, the episode that you're talking about is with Miss Anisha Dey, and that episode is about data science and about how to curate your LinkedIn in a way that it helps you get employed or find better opportunities. The other episode is obviously with Dr. Aditya Sodhi. I think Dr. Sondhi is very famous. I don't think the One Take Show has helped that much, but Dr. Sondhi is one of the leaders in the field. He's a senior advocate. If we talk about the One Take Show specifically, the idea was inspired by the concept that, okay, we as second year law students have this one paralysis that we don't get to know about a lot of things that we would have otherwise been exposed to because of our very strong alumni base if we were in NLS or NALSA or NFTs. If we talk about our alumni, which are absolutely wonderful and extremely helping and extremely accessible as well, are not being accessed or not being approached by the university by the university students in the very first place, because there is no such culture of learning from the people who are leading in a field. I think the One Take Show, what it necessarily does is, and I believe so the same, is that we have this one attempt, one shot at our career, and we have this one shot at starting good, starting big, and making it to a place where we can lay a foundation for a better practice in the future. So the best thing that we can do about this principle is that we can learn from the experiences of people who have gone through such experiences as well. And this has been a very selfish endeavor for me, because when I talk to them, I listen to my own recordings on multiple occasions, I make my own notes, and I learn from them. For example, my conversation with Mr. Bharat Chok, who is a former judge and is also the partner at Luthra & Luthra Partner, has exposed me to this possibility of super lawyers, and it's now I am researching on artificial intelligence and how it is evolving the jurisprudence across the world. I recently had a conversation which I have not released yet, but it is a conversation, I won't delve much into the details of the same, but it's a conversation around the right to publicity, and ma'am has given me amazing insight into what is right to publicity, how it is different from copyright and everything. We talk about Dr. Sondhi telling us how NLUs are essentially not possibly living up to those passion that litigation would have expected them to live up to, while litigation is something that is being overlooked. So yes, when you see all of these things, when you talk to Vanshaj Jain about his Rhodes experience, and Vanshaj, which will be released in a couple of days, I think that is one of the best episodes we have shot. Vanshaj talks about his experience at Rhodes, he talks about everything. When you go through all of that, you listen to them talk, and then you get to ask them the questions that you were supposed to ask them. You get the kind of satisfaction that you're making efforts, you're doing the kind of job that you need to do in order to add value to your life. And as I have previously said, every conversation or every time you talk to someone should add value, either in form of criticism or in form of a compliment. So when you are talking to someone, always add value. And if you can add value to the lives of, let's say, hundreds of law students through a medium which is as simplistic as recording an audio over Zoom call or other such medium using Anchor app, which I used previously, there is absolutely no harm. In fact, this is something that you should necessarily do, not just for yourself, but for everyone out there who needs this kind of an exposure. Because not everyone studies in a university that offers them that kind of an opportunity. If you can produce that for them, is something that will help you out. So that is why I believe that One Take Show is not exactly my podcast. It's not my project. It's a project that is built for every law student who has doubts, has questions, but cannot get them clarified, and would love a channel where they can ask such questions and get them clarified. through a convenient mode, which is a podcast, which is extremely convenient for you to access, listen to. All you need to do is take 40 minutes out of your time. Just listen to the conversation. All you have to do is just listen to the conversation. I have always opened my podcast to suggestions, to feedbacks, to questions as well. Like, I release my guests beforehand at times, and I ask for questions. Okay, for example, I have recently interviewed Mr. Subhik Vasudev, and we were talking about his LLM experience and his experience with working in an international law firm. And I've invited a lot of questions, and trust me, the kind of questions that I've received are genuinely very important and quite very different in nature, as you would not expect someone to ask such questions. For example, a question like, how can LLM help you in employment, becomes extremely important. Why should you even do LLM? What is the purpose of doing LLM if you want to go ahead with litigation? So these are the questions that you would not have necessarily asked someone whom you are interviewing for the purpose of LLM itself, right? So this is why I believe this is not a personal project. This is something that is being done for everyone who feels the need to learn from this process. And I hope that in future I keep getting this opportunity to talk to more and more people, so that I can produce that conversation and then put that out in the media so that people can access it. So that's my principle behind the One Page.
Right. Great. I mean, this is see, every bit of that we explore of yours is more and more inspiring. So I mean, we have completely failed to find any loopholes till now. I mean, my brother Hemant would have another question to ask you, which we were discussing before this meeting when we were prepping up, and we are very excited to see your take on it. Maybe because this is a much selfish, like it appeals more to us in general. So I want Hemant to go ahead with it.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I'll do it. So Kaustav, actually, law students like who studying not in tier 1 law firm, like the law schools, like not the top 5 or top 4, but if you go below it, like the tier 3 or tier 2 law schools or even state universities, right? They are very confused. Like, actually, because the first thing is they don't have the brand name coming into them, and the second part of it is, and many of the law schools are still establishing all the tier 3 law schools and all, and the students going over there are very confused. They don't know what to do as compared to students of the top law schools and that. So, like, what would you recommend for such students? Like, what are the things that they can enhance their their skills that can even help out in their employability skills in the future, and even the professional skills they want to engage.
Right, Hemant. That's a very interesting question. Yeah, that's a very good question. Quite recently, I've been approached by a lot of my peers, I would say, from universities which are not NLUs. I won't say what tier they are because I have no idea how this tier system works. I don't know why NLS is in the first tier, and I don't understand why any other university should not be in the first tier. But there are some universities which are not NLUs, and they have approached me quite very specifically in order to understand how the podcast setup works, which I have helped them with. But they've approached me with this idea that they want to explore this field that usually NLU students are presumed to have the access to. Now, at this point, I would like to quote Dr. Sondhi from the episode itself, where Dr. Sondhi said that the best of his juniors came from state universities and not from NLUs. That is primarily because NLUs do not teach their students to be humble, I think, which is very important. I think litigation is a merciless game, which is very rewarding, but yet still is merciless, just like any other law firm job or any other such field. Unless and until we are humble enough to understand that wherever we come from, may it be NLS, there is always someone who is going to outsmart, outshine us. And all it takes is for that one person to work hard for a month or two to outshine us. That's all it takes, like 1 month of hard work and they will outshine you. So if you have that kind of a mindset, you would be very humble, very, very humble. Having said that, when we talk about universities which possibly are not from the first tier, and let me explain how that really works. So I've had this conversation with a lot of people as to why first year universities have that kind of placement that they have, and why do our university not have that kind of a placement. So when we talk about that, we see that let's say in the instant case, the international universities or let's say Jindal or the NLSIU Bangalore. So let's talk about the first universities. NLSIU Bangalore, NHS, Nalsar, they have a very strong alumni base. You talk about their alumni base, which is settled not just in India, US, Canada, Germany, across the world, they have their alumni base. So they want the kind of feedback that they need, they'll get it from anyone, everywhere. Okay, if we talk about JESA preparation, they have the alumni base in NLS, in New York. You need placements, you see every partner in every major law firm is from NLS or Nalsar. So the kind of guidance that they get is obviously going to help them to explore opportunities better than it is going to help, let's say, a student from Dr. Raman Lohiya, or let's say we talk about universities which are not NLUs or possibly are in third year or something like that. So yes, that is one lack of opportunity which is there. But as Malcolm Gladwell says that there is an unjustified distribution of opportunities. This needs to be accepted. Having said that, I think this is why it becomes extremely important for every law student to take up an individual enterprise and exploit the opportunities like this show that we are right now recording, which will have multiple guests in the future, and also try and explore shows like the One Take Show, read interviews, read articles, read like essentially what I'm trying to say is that students should expose themselves to knowledge and to the developments happening in the field. Just because you're not from a good enough university does not mean that you are not allowed to work hard enough to get there. And I think there is a reason why NLS is so good. It is because the students reading law at NLS work extremely hard. They have trimesters, yet they perform so well in MOOCs, yet they perform so well in papers, in seminars and everything. And it's not a coincidence. It does not happen in a day or two. So yes, I think if you want to compete with law schools like NLS or Nalsar or something of that sort, you need to compete with them in the game that they are playing. So you need to raise your game. You need to raise your game no matter where you're from. I was having this conversation with Mr. Mohit Kupchandani, and he told me that his university was possibly not the best university in the country, but the kind of exposure that gave him the groundwork to build upon that and then explore the opportunities. So yeah, I think that should really be our principle when we approach this issue.
Once again,
now we'll move forward with the next segment, which we call the on your fingertips round. Okay, which is kind of similar to a rapid fire round. Okay, Kaustubh?
Right.
So the first question is, which is your favorite character from Suits?
Suits, yeah, Gina Torres, which was
Jessica Pearson.
Jessica Pearson, yes.
Amazing.
Why is that?
Harvey Specter is very overpowered and over glorified. I think he is a very impulsive kind of a guy who should not be celebrated. I think Jessica Pearson was the boss who was a real manipulator, and that's the character who should be
Virtual hi-fi.
Yeah. She's quite a bold woman. Yeah, a lot of things we should learn from Jessica. Yeah. So yeah, moving on. How would you describe yourself in 3 words?
Wow, this is turning into a real coffee with Karan question. Describe myself in 3 words. I'm funny, and I am funny. I'm lazy, but I am very curious. So yeah, funny, lazy, and curious.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, because you are involved in many things like shairi, sketching, stand-up, and whatnot. So which one of them happens to be your biggest addiction among shairi, sketching?
My addiction is okay. So my biggest addiction. Yeah, I won't say any of them are my addictions, but I think whatever I start doing, I do it till I get it done to a point where I'm satisfied that okay, I'm good at it. For example, in lockdown, I started doing sketching, and I was not sure if I'm good at it. Like not as good as I would want to be. So I started doing sketching and I started posting every day because that was my motivation. And then I got pretty good at it. I started getting good reviews. So then I took a break from sketching. But yes, if I were to do something every day, I would choose sketching. This is something I generally enjoy.
Good. Then if you had another chance to start law school all over again, so what is that one thing if which you would do, which you have not done here usually, if you hadn't the chance.
Which I haven't done yet, or which I have not done in the past in the first year.
Yeah, which you have not done in the
Till now. I mean,
early
till now
years
you have
in the law school. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I'll probably focus a lot on my academics, and I will build very strong relationship with my professors. I think this is something that I have missed out upon, which will force me to build a lot of connection with my professors for my LORs in the future. But I think this is something that I've realized pretty late, that your professors are important for other reasons as well. So yes.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, right. So yeah, if you don't mind sharing it, what have been your lowest grades in law school?
Yeah, I don't mind sharing it at all, but my lowest grades have been it's not been very bad. Like I've not 6.15 or 6 point something out of a 10, which is one of the semesters. I don't remember which, second or third one. Yeah, it was 6 point something, which was the semester when I was preparing for MOOC. So it's quite justified. Yeah. Don't put this on out.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So from hosting a podcast to being invited to a talk show, how do you feel? What difference do you feel?
Yeah, no difference whatsoever. I think this is just me chatting with a couple of my potential friends, and I think there should be no difference. Talk shows, we don't host multinational talk shows. These are bloody Zoom calls which will get recorded and put on YouTube for 300-400 views at best. So this should not really have that kind of a difference on your approach. But yeah, it's fun. It's a good time pass in lockdown, to say the least.
So Kaustav, if you were given a chance to create a silly law, so what would that not be?
To create a silly law?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Legislate something.
Yeah, sure. I will go back in time and I'll redraft sedition, and this time only stricter. So that will be even sillier than what it is today. But yeah, it will be. If there is any law which is sillier than sedition law, although since we are done away with section 377, but everything else can be debated. But in my opinion, sedition should not be debated. Sedition should not exist in a democratic society. But yeah.
Okay, Kaustav, if you are okay to share with us, then is there any nickname with which your friends call you?
Yeah, my friends only call me Kaustav. Apparently, every law student pronounces Kaustav pretty clearly too. So I don't know. Kaustav has become my nickname now. Become my regular name. Clarify. People do call me Costco. They call me Cos Theta. They call me Cost Not.
Cost.
Yeah. So that happens.
So those are still very civilized nicknames. I mean, the ones in law schools which we hear of are not very webinar based on this. Anyways.
Right. Not appropriate to be spoken out in a webinar.
RML is a very conducive place to exist. RML people are civil. Mostly they are civil.
There's no mudslinging anymore. Okay, Kaustav, so name any 3 things which are in your bucket list.
Which are in my bucket list?
Yeah.
Okay. Firstly, it's to write and publish a book, manuscript. Secondly, is to debate in Oxford Union sometime in future. And lastly, would be to I don't know. I haven't thought of this in a long time. I don't know. Probably visit some exotic location in somewhere in Egypt or in Middle East or somewhere in Africa. I don't know. Some place that has not been explored yet. Would love to go out and explore those areas as well. Because I've just been to one country outside India, that has been Myanmar, and I was very fascinated by their culture and their entire outlook to life. So I think yes, this is something I would talk about.
It was fun at the end, Kaustav. It was fun talking to you. We had a delightful time talking to you. You know, your insights, your experiences, and more. So, you know, the most important part, what I felt in this whole conversation was your insight of me telling about students what to be done, telling them to be channelizing what they want to do in the future, like growing their area of interest, not going in, and how do you find it out? The best part of it was this, and it was wonderful again to have you over here. Hope we have you again in our show. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it has been a wonderful opportunity. before Rajas sums it up and asks me to end this meeting, I would just say that I think this kind of conversation is very important. I'm really grateful for the invitation. I'm grateful that you thought that I could scale up to whatever expectations you had for guests. I'm really grateful that I am the first guest of your show. I hope it goes on to becoming what I hope it becomes, and then someday I get invited back again with the proper smile to the compliment of being an exceptional leader.
For sure.
But yes, I think
For sure.
the idea here is, ladies and gentlemen, that yes, I believe that everyone should explore their possibilities, everyone should explore their vulnerabilities, and this is one of the ways of doing so. And I really congratulate you guys on this venture.